What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hammerdown Motorsports. Today, behind me, we have our 22 Super Duty. It is factory sealed. It is basically untouched other than our intake system from Banks. And we are going to be taking off our upper and lower intake, a bunch of our piping, all to dig down to the one major issue with the Super Duty Diesel, which is our CP4 pump. Now, if you guys don't know, the CP4 pump is a Bosch pump, and it has had some issues when dirty fuel or water get into it. It will be basically filling your entire system with scraps of metal, little bits of glitter, and all those things that would not be as exciting when you see that on your fuel system, because that ends up tearing up everything. You're going to end up needing new injectors, new lines, new fuel tank, new everything. It's a big job, and it can cost up to around $16,000, as I've said in previous videos. So today, being that our truck has 6,700 miles on it, it's very, very fresh. We are going to be doing something from our good friends over at S&S to prevent us from a catastrophic failure like this. The CP4, I mean, obviously I do my preventative maintenance, I do my fuel filter changes on time, I test my diesel, I do my additives, and that is all well and good. But if there's just something that somehow goes wrong on that pump, we don't want to have it destroying everything and causing a big issue. So what they've done is designed a kit that allows you to catch any kind of debris coming from that CP4 pump and collect it in a filter before it goes into your return fuel, and then ends up being reintroduced into the system and destroying everything, causing big problems. So with this kit, we would minimize that down to the CP4 pump and one section of line. So that would be a whole lot better, because I think a CP4 pump, don't quote me on this, is probably maybe $1,200, and then you'd have to get a new line for your disaster prevention kit and a new filter, and essentially you'd probably be good to go. So that's a big difference from the big full injectors, full lines, tank, the whole deal. So in today's video, we're going to be taking off everything required to get to the CP4 pump. We're going to be installing the S&S Disaster Prevention Kit. We're going to be showing you what's included in the kit and kind of the things that you're going to need to do to get this installed on your truck. All right, so when you order your kit from S&S, you will receive a box just like this one. Let's open this guy up. Look at that presentation. And I even got a special gift from our good friends at S&S, a beautiful S&S t-shirt, which I will definitely be wearing, but I think I'm going to wait until after the install because, well, I don't want to get it dirty, and it's probably the nicest shirt that I have right now. So in the kit, we have everything is just like, look at that. It's just like you're in a store display right now. So this line set here, you can see we do have nice plugs and everything in here to keep any kind of contaminants out. You probably want to maybe blow some clean air through these just to make sure there's nothing in there, but we should be good to go. This piece is actually going to go underneath our volume control valve on top of our CP4. Once we get all the intakes and everything out of the way, we can access this. And there's a whole lot of lines and things that we're going to be replumbing to make all of this work. Now you can see this guy out of here, we got this beautiful S&S filter adapter. Now our new filter is going to go onto this for our return fuel, and that is going to be inside here. You can see we do have a Donaldson filter. Our filter number is right here, is a P550943. So you probably want to have a couple of these lying around, just so when you do change your fuel filters, you can change your return fuel filter as well. And then we have full color instructions, which we're going to be following along to. And then we have our other lines here as well. We have another line here. We have some bracketry and some isolators. We have our fittings for our filter, and of course a beautiful S&S decal. We have our bracket for our new filter housing, and they have a very nice kit here. You even get these included, which are zip ties that have little holders for the hoses so you can have everything routed perfectly. Then you can zip tie these so you can keep these from moving around and have a very nice factory looking finish. And then in here we have our bolts that are going to go through our billet piece on this guy right here. And then we have our new O-rings as well. So step one, we're going to grab a 10 millimeter and we're going to get after both of our negative terminals on our batteries, get them both disconnected, move them off to the side so we're not going to accidentally connect by accident, and have everything nicely electrically disconnected. And we're just going to work this clamp down, get it off of the degas bottle. All right, so I needed two hands for this for a second, but you just want to give this hose a twist. Ugh, a little bit of coolant came out the end there, but we do have our clamp on that. And then we're going to end up taking all of our coolant squiggly stuff, all our mess of hoses that they have running across here. We're going to kind of move that over to the side so we can get in here and get what we need done. So during this process, we're trying not to drain the coolant. So you're going to want to clamp this line, and then it's this clamp here, and then there's this guy here we're going to pop off. And then we've got our tool underneath this as well. And then over here, there's another one of those, which we're going to get with our trim tool. Get that popped off of here. And then all of this should just go over on this side, and we should be good to go. So now we're going to snake this guy. Try not to make a big coolant mess. Get all of this nicely sitting over here. So next up, we're going to get our cold side pipe off. So we do have this piece on our throttle valve, which is our little retaining clip. You get a little screwdriver in here and just kind of rotate this guy around a little bit. Move it back onto the back side here of our pipe. They're not too terrible to deal with. Just kind of pop this whole thing back. And give it a little wiggle. Then on our electrical connection, there's a little anchor right here we're going to pop off, and then you're just going to squeeze and pull. Get that electrical connection out of the way. Just going to put that off to the side here. And then we're going to go down here to our intercooler, and we're going to get our 7 millimeter worm clamp loosened up, and we can pull this hose out of the way. And it's always nice to note too how tight things are. I mean, this did not feel tight at all, so you don't have to go crazy and strip out the clamp. When you put everything back together, just kind of keep a reference of how tight things were when you took them off. We're going to reach down in here, slide that off of our intercooler. Look at that. Look at that nastiness. So with your CCV, when all of that oil and gunk from the positive crankcase ventilation goes back into your intake, well, it ends up going down your tubing and going into your intercooler and all of that. And this is only like not even 7,000 miles. So imagine after a couple 100,000 how that gets all gunked up in there. So let's get this guy out of the way here. Snake it up without catching on anything. I guess it keeps your hoses lubricated so you don't have trouble getting them off. It's good for one thing. So just as a side note, you can follow the instructions to the T, and I'm sure there's a million different ways that you can take this apart, different orders, whatever. For me, I'm just kind of getting at the things that are right in front of me just so I can get them out of the way, and I don't really think it matters particularly which order you take them apart, as long as they come apart and they go back together. That's pretty much where we're at with this. And it is time to switch to gloves because, well, I mean, my daughter got me these gloves for Christmas and I have to use them because why wouldn't I? So now we're going to take off this right here, and well, obviously we have the Banks air intake, which is absolutely awesome, I might add. We have coolant on it. Let's do this. Let's do that. Okay, so now if we leak any coolant, we're going to catch it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these two clamps off, get this off of our lower intake. If you have a 22, I think it was like 20 to 22, maybe even current, 23, who knows? I have not seen one of those just yet, but we do have this plastic lower, and then we have this aluminum upper. So this is going to come with the lower, they're separate, but they're gonna come out at the same time. So now what I'm gonna do, since I already got this cold side off, we're gonna take the throttle valve off. I did wipe this a little bit, so it is cleaner than it was, but there's a lot of assembly lube on here, which is from the factory, but there is some oil in there as well, so we're gonna clean that up too before we reinstall it. We do have an electrical connector here on the bottom. There's a little red tab. I'm just gonna pull that out, and then you're able to get that connector off. But we'll probably do that once I get the bolts removed, and then I can kind of get a little bit of better access to that. So yeah, we're gonna get the throttle valve off, we're gonna get this tube off and continue on. So here's the backside of our throttle valve. It's not terrible, I mean, but it is starting to get a little bit of buildup on it just from our crankcase ventilation, everything running through that system and reburning it in your engine instead of having it blow out into the atmosphere, because that would be terrible. So now that we have our air intake little section of tubing out, you can see we have this sensor right here. It's our EGR temp sensor. Then right down in here, there's, get my hand out of the way. Let's see if the light, if you guys can see. We do have this little clip right here. And mine was actually very loose. I barely even moved the wire and the entire clip came with it. But the wire just pops out of that clip, and then down here, you can disconnect it electrically. Now once you get this disconnected, there is a little kind of Christmas tree on it that's underneath this that you're gonna have to pop off just to get it up out of the way. Then we're gonna remove our 4 bolts holding this section of our EGR pipe. We get that out of the way and disconnected from our upper intake. And these are 8mm as well. And also on these gaskets, you can replace them, but being that this is a fairly new truck, very low miles, we're gonna reuse those. Make sure we don't drop our gaskets. Hold those both as we get this guy out of here. Now we're gonna go after our hot side pipe, and as I'm doing this, I'm like, I should have bought new piping and made this all upgraded. But either way, one day down the road, we're gonna know exactly what we need to do to pop these guys off. And in case you guys didn't know, this is my first 6.7 I've ever worked on, really in any capacity. So we're all doing this for the first time together. And if I can do it, I'll walk you through it and you can do it too. So we're gonna have a worm clamp with a 7mm over here on this side by our intercooler. And then we're gonna have another one of those clips that we're gonna pull up, kind of that little ring that locks into place. So we're gonna pop that up out of the grooves, and we should be able to get this guy out of there. All right, so we got our hot side out, and I'm not gonna lie, I did fight with this for a minute just because I wasn't entirely sure how it all worked. But it is this little tab right here that goes through that hole and locks everything into place, and you just gotta pop it up and back, and then this whole thing comes out real nice and easy. So if you guys have seen, well, right here we do have our CCV pipe, which goes back to our CCV box, which sits over here on top of that valve cover. On the 22, they don't have a filter anymore, so they don't plug up like some of the earlier models did, but you still end up feeding that oil vapor back into your intake, goes into your turbo, ends up coming back through, and as you guys saw, we'll take a rag right here. This is just what's in our, right after our intake tube. Look at that. So not even 7,000 miles, and we already have buildup in there. And I've seen ones that were a lot older, a lot more miles, and there's a lot of gunk that gets built up in there. So for me, it's really irking me, the fact that it does that. And we're going to be on another video doing something with this. So definitely stay tuned for that one as well. All right, so we got our CCV hose off of our lower intake, and actually it wasn't too bad. There's these fingers here on the side. There's 3 of them. And I was able to take a skinny screwdriver or pick. I was able to get this guy in there, just kind of lift it up and slide it through. And then I went and grabbed another one, and I got it into the other one that I could see, got that in there, and then I just kind of held the 2 of them together, give it a little wiggle, popped right off. So you can definitely get these off without ruining them, but that's just kind of how Ford makes them. They figure you just destroy it. But if you take a little bit of time, you can get them off, and it's not a big deal. All right, next up, we're gonna get our upper fuel filter off, and super simple. I mean, this is the first time I ever did it. I did need 2 hands, so I have already got them disconnected. This one has a little tab right here. I just kind of pulled it back, and then a tiny little bit of pressure with a little screwdriver to bring this green guy up. No big deal. And these ones, you just squeeze the legs together and kind of push the white clip up, and that releases them.
This one's kind of sideways, but same kind of deal. Have that white piece up and nice and out of the way, and they just remove very, very easily. Now what we're gonna do is gonna turn our fuel filter. Make sure we get these lines out of the way. I may need 2 hands for this, but let's see if we can do it. Just gonna kind of turn this guy, bring it up. Slight gravity helping us keep the fuel in it. We'll set this over here on our parts table. Now we're going to remove our dipstick tube mounting to our upper intake. I think I may need a better angle there. Let's go with this. The proper way to use one of these ratchets, break it free, and then spin it out, right? So we have the one on the stud, and then we have another one back here. That bolt out of the way, and then we can pop this dipstick tube off the stud, kind of up out of the way for us. Next up, we're going to get our filter housing off, and those are going to be 8 millimeters. You can just, at least that bolt didn't go far. Pick this guy up. We left the front one in, and we will put it in. Actually, we're just going to leave it in there because it's going to stay in there when we sneak it past these lines and we reinstall everything. Next, we're gonna get over here, we're gonna get this top plate off, and then we're gonna undo our wire connectors here. And just keep in mind which connector goes to which, so we know where everything goes when we put it all back together. And we're gonna get in here with a little 8 millimeter ratchet wrench. All right, so we got the upper plate removed here, so we got a little bit of cowl clearance. Then we got the one anchor off here. These are very tricky to not break, so be careful with them. They are a little long, so you gotta kind of just work it to get it to come out. Then what we're gonna do, there's one more stud here, which is part of our intake bolt assemblies, and we're gonna get that pulled up off that stud, that black piece there with the wiring, so that can get all the way out of the way. And then we can get all of our intake bolts off on our upper and lower. There's a worm clamp on our turbo as well. We're gonna get that. And then everything's gonna come up and out of here. And we should have lots of room to work. All right, so our upper and lower intake are now loose. I got the clamp for the turbo off. And there is a bolt back here by this sensor that nobody talks about on any of the videos I've seen because it's kind of a bear. There might be a better way that I can get on it, but it's kind of tricky just because where that sensor is. But I ended up getting it with this guy right here. This is my Icon swivel that has a little bit of, it's not perfectly flush. We got a little bit of a step down on it. So I was able to get it out with that. And yeah, we'll see how it all goes together. But now, since we have everything mobile here, pick this all up together and wiggle and twist until we have this out on the bench. There we go. All right, so I just got off the phone with my boy PTT, Powerstroke Tech Talk with A-Rod, and he gave me some advice for this back bolt here on the intake. He said if you actually back off the nut that holds that back pressure sensor onto the bracket, you're gonna be able to get a little bit of movement out of it so you can get something down in there to get to that tricky bolt. And he also recommended to get some 1/4-inch wobbles as well, which I'm gonna be investing in. That's gonna make life a whole lot more easy when it comes to some of these trickier spots. All right, so now we are tore down to this point. We can see our VCV or FCA right here on top of our pump. And this is what we're gonna be removing to get our disaster prevention kit piece underneath. So it sits on top of the pump, which is this guy right here. So we're gonna put our new seals on this, and then we're gonna take some compressed air and some brake clean. We're just gonna make sure this area is super clean before we end up taking the bolts out and exposing the top of the pump. Also, what we're gonna do is we're gonna blow out our S&S lines just to make sure there's nothing that got caught in there in the manufacturing process. All right, so now that we have everything nicely blown out, we know that our passageways are nice and clear. We are going to get our O-rings out of this pack right here. You can see we have our longer bolts. So we can go through our volume control valve, or FCA, and our new return fuel filtering block. Get that O-ring right in there. Fits very nicely. And I'm going to put some clean diesel on these to lubricate them as well. And now we're ready to remove the factory volume control valve. All right, so first up, we're going to get our lock for our electrical connection. Squeeze and pull, get that guy out of the way. Then we have our long T25, and this is going to get into this kind of a tight tolerance back here between our runner and our pump. And we can get our 2 bolts removed and get this out of the top of our pump. So now, just in case, I put a rag down here in the valley and I have another rag here on deck in case we have a bunch of fuel coming out here, but get these bolts removed. See a tiny bit of fuel coming out there. I'll leave the one closer to the runner in. We're gonna grab this one here on the outside. Carefully wiggle and pull straight up. Feeling those O-rings. Kind of release it. Up we come. I think I need to maybe do a couple more threads on this bolt. And there it is. Now you're going to want to inspect your screen on this and make sure that there's no glitter or any nastiness. Mine is very fresh truck. I use all of the fuel additives I need to, and mine looks absolutely pristine, which is what you want to see. All right, so this is going to sit in the truck like this with our hose towards the driver's side, and it's going to make sure everything is really nice and clean in that bore. And then I'm going to start our FCA, or our volume control valve, into this bore right here. Make sure everything is nicely seated. You don't want to run this in with the bolts. Just make sure your electrical connector is going the right way, and then we'll get this all seated together and we're ready to install this into our truck. So now I've lubricated our O-rings with some clean diesel. Now we're going to put our valve right here. Just kind of nicely seat it into our billet aluminum piece here. Got these at 60 inch-pounds. And with the new S&S longer bolts, they're going to be switching up to a 4mm Allen. Now we're going to take our electrical connection, get that back on there, lock it in place so we don't forget. And now we're ready for a little bit of reassembly and some hose routing. So now, as if you didn't think we had enough fun already, we're going to go in, and you can see that line down here, which is actually this guy, which goes onto our filter, is a plastic line that's onto a metal line on our 2020 Pluses, and that one is gonna have to come off, and they didn't make it as easy as they could have for us. There's no disconnect. We're gonna have to heat and remove that line. So one thing that is a little bit of an issue is we do have our CCV pipe, which I kind of routed around our oil fill to kind of get it a little bit out of the way, but you can still see it is pretty close, and if we start getting a torch in there, we're probably going to end up burning that. I mean, we are going to be doing something with that anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but I don't exactly want a bunch of melted burning plastic around, so I think we're going to do a little something, and we're going to make another video on that whole process. So definitely check that one out as well, but you will notice in the next scene that something over here may have vanished.
Nothing like taking fire to your new truck, but let's get this thing warmed up. Okay, we got those nice, and you can see I'm just touching the razor blade on the softness of that plastic. You don't want to breathe in these fumes either. You don't want to hold it on too terribly long. Just be very, very light with the razor blade. Can't tell you how lightly I'm pushing on that, but it's really just the weight of the razor blade. And kind of like almost towards me a little bit, so I'm not pushing down. Give it a little wiggle with my pliers, see if we can get this thing to move at all. Tab started here. I'm actually kind of spiraling it around the bottom here. Got my needle nose underneath. Try to kind of work this whole thing around if it'll spin off for us. And I broke my nice tab off, so guess we're gonna have to keep working it. But now you can see we can actually turn it. So once we compromise it a little bit more, hopefully it'll just want to work off for us. All right, so after a little bit of struggle and just setting that razor blade in that area in the middle here and peeling, and I ended up actually taking a little seal pick and just lightly getting underneath here just to kind of open up where I've been working at with the razor blade. And then you can see it opened. Let's get a rag here. We got a little bit of diesel. Catch that. And just gonna give it a little twist. And there we go. Our rag was right where it needed to be. And we got our line removed. So as you can see, there's absolutely no marks on our fuel line, which is exactly what you want. So don't go crazy with it on the pliers and whatever else. Just slowly heat and just kind of just let that razor blade sit in there and just kind of make a little bit of a groove like we said. And then just take your time and it will come out without completely destroying that fuel line, because you do not want to do that. So now you can see our S&S line. We have the S&S insignia right there, which is very nice, high quality. We do have the Oetker clamp as well, which is already on for this fitting. So first thing, I'm going to blow this out with some compressed air, and then we're ready to put this onto the line right where we removed our old plastic line from the factory. So now we're going to put our clamp on the hose, and we're going to work this line on past both ribs, and then we're going to put our clamp right here past the second rib so it is closer to the line. So we have two ribs inside of this hose, and our clamp is going to be right there. Tighten this down and we have it nicely in place. So now you can see we do have these are zip ties with a little hose clamp attachment, which is very nice. What we're going to do first is we're gonna take our S&S line with the red tab on it. We're gonna pull our little plug out of there, wrap it around our oil fill plug. We're gonna go on, nice snap, locked into place, around, locked into our new hose that we just put on. Now you can see we have all three that are gonna line up really nicely right here for our factory filter. So now that we roughly have this line where we want it, I'm gonna take these that are provided with the kit. It's a little hose attachment on a zip tie, and then right there, not gonna get any kinks or any strain on the lines. Keep that in a very nice position. And just run our zip tie around. We'll do 2 of those on that line, and I think we should be good to go. All right, so now that our hose is nicely routed, everything looks nice and factory the way it should be, we are ready to remove our paper towels for safety. You wanna make sure you always cover your intake runners, make sure nothing falls down in there. That would be a terrible day. So we're gonna get all that out, and then we're ready to install our intakes once again. So now we're just gonna get all of our bolts back in where they need to be. There is that one that is on the far side there that we might have to back off the bracket for that back pressure sensor and move that up so we can get something in there to get a proper tightened torque on that guy. But we're just gonna work our way around and get everything put back together the way we took it off.
Well, everybody, it's starting to look like a truck again. We have 2 lines and we have our filter that we need to mount yet. And then we are all complete, and I just got to put our hot side pipe back on, but I figured I'd leave that off until we're ready to go. I have the cup back in for the fuel filter. You can see here, this is where our 3 lines are going to go into our filter from now on. If I can get these all, there we go. This is what it's going to look like pretty much. But now what we have to do is we have this line right here. We're going to separate that, and that's going to be the last of our 2 lines that we have remaining in our box over there. And then we're going to mount our filter, and then we can click those together, put our filter housing rather, put our filter on, and we'll have her all buttoned up. All right, so now we have our lines over here, which we're gonna install, and then we have our filter head. And what you want to do here is clean this up really good. We're going to blow it out just to make sure there's nothing residual in there. And then, being that we do have the newer model truck, we're going to use the spacer, the long bolt, and the lock nut to mount this. And putting on your bracketry is pretty simple. 2 isolators, a couple nuts, and this little angle bracket. And then what we had to do, I just took my little trim tool and just popped these guys, these little tabs sticking out here, and then this whole thing lifts up enough that you can get at this guy right here. Just gonna pop that out of the way, and then we can just save that. We're not gonna need it anymore for its current application because our bolt's gonna drop through there. And then we're gonna mount our filter housing right here, and then we'll show you guys how the lines all go on. But before we do that, you can see this line right here. This goes back to tank. And then on the bottom, you can see the steel line, which actually is our return fuel from our engine. So what we're gonna do, push these little legs in here, give it a bit of a wiggle. Okay. A little bit of fuel came off there, but not too much, but always nice to have a rag there. Now we're gonna install our lines that are gonna go to our filter. All right, so on our return side to the tank, we're gonna grab this line here. See that right there. And then we're gonna grab the end of it. You can hear it click. And we're gonna turn that 180 degrees, and that's gonna allow us to put on our line from S&S. So now we're gonna take the barbed line from our kit, pop that in there, lock it into position, give it a nice little wiggle, and then just gonna let that right like that for now. Another thing to mention, the blue clips are always gonna go to your filter. So we have a black one on this side. That's gonna go to our hard line right here. And we can get our rags out of here. So we've caught all the fuel we're gonna catch. gonna pop the black side of our double female hose onto that factory line. All right, so let's check our instructions here real quick. This is our flow direction. So our return fuel to tank is gonna be on the passenger side, and return fuel from the engine is gonna be on the driver's side. So we are coming from the hard line, which is the hard line that goes here to our engine, which is gonna be on our driver's side. And then right here, this is gonna be our return line to the tank. That's gonna be on the passenger side. So now that we have all this out of the way, we're gonna pull this clip out of here, and then we can get our mounting hardware in, get our filter mounted, hooked up, and get our last charge pipe, our hot side, put on, and we're ready to fire this thing up. And as for our block, we're just gonna put our fittings in. There is O-rings you gotta put on these fittings on either side. Then we're just gonna tighten this thing down, and we'll be good to go. It is aluminum, it has O-rings, we don't have to go crazy on it, just a nice snug. 10mm wrench underneath. Snugged up. You don't want to go too crazy. We are dealing with plastic here. Just enough so it's not going to be flopping around or easily moved by hand. And I did clean everything with brake clean, but I'm probably just gonna, for my own peace of mind, go over it one more time on the bottom, and then we should be ready to put our filter on. We can attach our lines. All right, so we have our lines all connected now to our new filter housing. And I gotta say, I mean, look at the top of that filter housing. It looks absolutely awesome on here. S&S definitely goes the extra mile with everything. You can see all their insignias on all the fittings and everything. They take a lot of pride in what they're creating here, and that's why I'm proud to have their stuff on my truck. But we're gonna go through our routing here real quick. We do have from the top of our CP4 over here going to the center of our filter. And then right here, this is actually going to our return line to the tank. So we're going from our hard line over here, which is gonna be the double female, and that goes back towards the booster, comes up here. So we are going from our return from our engine up into here. Then that's going to be filtered, and then it's going out through here. This is our barbed line, which goes into our return to our tank. And we have some nice return fuel that is filtered. Now, if we ever have that problem with our CP4, which we hope we won't, but you can always use additives and everything. Make sure you're using clean diesel, make sure you're changing your fuel filters, make sure you're draining your water separator. All those things help that CP4 live a very long life. But in case that happens, we have now some insurance. And also on my filter, I did write the mileage of the truck and the date when I put it on, so I know when to change this. They say severe duty, you're probably around 15,000 miles, and less duty, you can get away with a little bit more, depending on what you're using your truck for. For me, probably when I do my fuel filters, I'm just gonna do that one as well, so just to keep on top of things. But now it's time to put our hot side back on, and then we're gonna reconnect our batteries and cycle our fuel system, and hopefully we should have no leaks. All right, so now we have everything connected. Everything is fuel connected, electrically, all of that. So I did do 3 cycles already with just pushing the start button without pushing the brake. So we're gonna do one more, show you what that's like. And we can still hear some air getting out of the system. I did it 3 times and then I just let it sit for a little while, so still some air bubbles to work out. You can feel the lines. They vibrate just so slightly with that lift pump running. Let's listen to that thing purr. Well, at least the truck still runs and we don't have any leaks. So those are wins in my book. And well, yeah, you guys want to watch that other video because we did have a little bit of a scare with this truck. And I'm going to do a short about it as well, just because it is good knowledge for you guys out there. if you do have this issue. So I'm gonna shut the truck off and then we can do the outro. So there it is, everybody. The truck is back up and running. I went through and checked for leaks. Everything looks really, really good. I'm gonna go for a test drive with it tomorrow, being that it is late out, but we should be good to go as far as all of that is concerned. Big thanks to S&S for sending this out. This is an absolutely awesome kit, very high quality in every way, and it goes on pretty easily. I definitely took the long way with doing this just because I wanted to make sure everything was absolutely perfect, and being the first time that I ever took apart anything on my brand new 6.7 liter Platinum, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I didn't want to screw it up. So with that being said, if I could do it, you could do it. Just make sure you have some tools in your toolbox to be able to get into some of these tight areas. That's really the only hard part about it, and just the time of going through and making sure that everything comes off and goes on the way it should. But if you made it to this point in the video, drop CP4 in the comment section below, or whatever you'd like to say, and I can interact with you guys there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and as always, keep that hammer down.